I'm staring at my phone screen, reading my sister's text message for the third time, and I can't believe what I'm seeing. Sorry, Emma, can't help right now. Just bought the new Tesla and cash is tight. Cash is tight. From the woman who just posted Instagram stories of her $200 brunch, her designer handbag collection, and her vacation to the Maldives last month. The same sister who lives in a $3 million house with her surgeon husband while I'm about to lose my apartment. My hands are shaking as I set the phone down. Not from fear, from rage. Because what my sister doesn't know, what none of my family knows, is that I'm sitting on a secret that would change everything. 3 weeks ago, I won $47 million in the lottery. And before I tell anyone, I wanted to see who would actually help me when I needed it most. Let me tell you, the results have been eye-opening. If you're watching this story, drop a comment and let me know what city you're from. I want to see how far this reaches, because what happened to me could happen to anyone with a family like mine. My name is Emma Chen. I'm 32 years old, and until 3 weeks ago, my life was a constant struggle. I worked as a graphic designer at a small marketing agency in Denver, barely scraping by on $38,000 a year while my student loans ate up half my paycheck. Meanwhile, my older sister Victoria lives like a queen. She married Dr. Richard Blackwell 5 years ago, and ever since, she's been living in luxury while I've been choosing between groceries and gas money. Their house in Cherry Hills Village has 6 bedrooms, a pool, and a 3-car garage. Victoria drives a Range Rover, gets her nails done twice a week, and hasn't worked a day since her wedding. Growing up, Victoria was always the golden child. She was 3 years older, captain of the cheerleading team, homecoming queen, the whole package. Our parents, Linda and Robert Chen, made it clear she was their pride and joy. I was the artsy one, the dreamer, the one who needed to be more practical. "Why can't you be more like Victoria?" became the family motto. When Victoria got into Stanford for pre-med, the celebration lasted for weeks. When I got a scholarship to art school, Dad said, "Just make sure you have a backup plan." Victoria never made it through med school. She dropped out junior year to marry Richard, who she'd met at a hospital volunteer event. Our parents called it smart and strategic. They said she'd landed well. I, meanwhile, finished my degree and started working immediately. I've been supporting myself since graduation, never asking for help, watching Victoria post her perfect life on social media while I ate ramen for dinner. The thing about having a sister who married rich is that everyone assumes you benefit from it somehow. Friends would ask why I drove a beat-up Honda when my sister had luxury cars. Family members would suggest I ask Victoria for help when I mentioned struggling with rent. But Victoria and I weren't close. Not anymore. Her wealth had created a barrier between us that grew wider every year. She'd invite me to expensive restaurants and expect me to split the bill. She'd talk about her problems: the housekeeper quit, the pool company overcharged them, Richard wanted a boat and she preferred a vacation home, while I nodded and pretended my own financial stress didn't exist. The worst part was watching our parents fawn over her success. Every family dinner was about Victoria's latest purchase, her charity galas, her tennis lessons. When was the last time anyone asked about my work, my art, my life? I'd been buying lottery tickets for years, spending $20 every Friday on the slim hope that maybe, someday, I could escape the constant stress of living paycheck to paycheck. My coworkers teased me about it. Emma's retirement plan, they called it. Little did they know how right they'd be. 3 weeks ago, on a Friday night, I was sitting in my tiny studio apartment, eating leftover Chinese food, and avoiding my credit card statements when I remembered to check my lottery numbers. I pulled up the website on my laptop, found my tickets, and started comparing numbers. First number matched, then the second. By the third match, my heart was racing. Fourth, fifth, sixth, all perfect matches. I stared at the screen for 10 minutes before it sank in. I had won $47 million. After taxes, it would be about $28 million, more money than I'd ever dreamed of having. My first instinct was to call someone, to share the incredible news. I picked up my phone to call Victoria, then stopped. Something held me back. Maybe it was years of watching how money affected people, or maybe it was intuition, but I decided to wait. Instead, I spent the weekend researching what happened to lottery winners. The stories were terrifying. Families torn apart by greed, winners going bankrupt within years because everyone they knew suddenly needed help, people losing marriages, friendships, their entire support systems. One article stuck with me. The lottery reveals who people really are when money enters the equation. That's when I got an idea. What if, before I told anyone about the money, I tested who would actually help me when I needed it? What if I created a situation where I needed assistance and saw who stepped up without the promise of personal gain? I spent Monday meeting with lawyers and financial advisors, setting up trusts and securing the money. Then I crafted my plan. I would tell my family that I'd been laid off from my job due to company downsizing. I'd say I needed help with rent and medical bills, $5,000 total, just to get back on my feet. It was a significant amount, but not outrageous for people with money. And certainly not impossible for a family that supposedly loved me. I made a list of who I'd approach. Victoria and Richard, our parents, my Aunt Susan, who always bragged about her successful real estate business, and my cousin Jake, who worked in tech and made six figures. Before I started, I tried to predict their responses. Victoria would probably make excuses about her own expenses. Mom and Dad would lecture me about financial responsibility. Aunt Susan would find reasons why she couldn't help. Jake might offer something small. I hoped I'd be wrong. I really hoped my cynicism was misplaced and that when I needed them most, my family would show up for me. I called Victoria first. "Hey Vic, can we talk? Something happened at work." "Oh no, what's wrong?" She sounded genuinely concerned, which gave me hope. I told her the whole story. How the agency had lost its biggest client, how they'd had to lay off half the design team, how I was suddenly unemployed with rent due in 2 weeks. "That's terrible, Emma. I'm so sorry. Have you filed for unemployment?" "Yes, but it'll take weeks to process. And I have some medical bills from that doctor visit last month that I can't put off. I hate to ask this, but I need help with about $5,000 to cover rent and expenses until I find something new." The silence stretched so long, I thought the call had dropped. "Emma, you know I'd love to help, but Richard and I just made a huge investment in the new practice expansion. We're pretty leveraged right now." Leveraged? I thought about the Tesla she'd bought last week, the $800 purse she'd posted on Instagram yesterday. "Plus," she continued, "maybe this is a blessing in disguise. You could use this time to reassess your career choices. Richard always said graphic design isn't stable long term." My jaw dropped. Not only was she refusing to help, she was using my crisis to criticize my life choices. "Right," I managed to say. "Well, thanks anyway." "Of course, and hey, if you need to cut expenses, you could always move back in with Mom and Dad temporarily. They'd love to have you." After I hung up, I sat in stunned silence. My sister, who spent more on lunch than I made in a day, who lived in a house worth more than I'd earn in a lifetime, couldn't spare $5,000 to help me avoid homelessness. But she could offer advice about my career and suggest I move back in with our parents like a failure. The call to our parents was next. I reached Mom first, and her response was predictably disappointing. "Oh, honey, that's awful about your job. But you know how tight things are for us right now with Dad's retirement and the property taxes going up." Property taxes on their $800,000 house in Highlands Ranch, the house they'd paid off years ago. "I understand, Mom, but..." "Have you talked to Victoria? She and Richard are doing so well, maybe they could help." I explained that Victoria couldn't help because of their business expenses. "Well, what about that emergency fund you were supposed to be building? We've talked about this, Emma. You need to have 6 months of expenses saved." There it was. Even in crisis, it was my fault for not being more financially responsible. Never mind that I'd been living on poverty wages while they traveled to Europe twice a year. "Maybe this is the push you need to find something more stable," Mom continued. "Susan knows people in insurance. That's steady work with good benefits." I thanked her and hung up, feeling sick. Not only would they not help, but Mom had already started planning my career change to something she considered more respectable. Dad's response was even worse. When I called him separately, hoping he might be more sympathetic, he launched into a lecture about fiscal responsibility and the importance of living below your means. This is exactly why I've been telling you to be more practical, Emma. Art is a nice hobby, but it doesn't provide security. Maybe now you'll listen to us about getting a real career. A real career. As if the work I'd been doing for 8 years, the clients I'd helped, the designs I'd created, none of it mattered because it didn't pay enough to satisfy his definition of success. My Aunt Susan was next. She'd always been the successful businesswoman of the family, constantly posting about her real estate achievements and luxury lifestyle. Emma, sweetie, I wish I could help, but you know how real estate works. All my money is tied up in properties right now. I literally don't have liquid cash available. This from the woman who just posted pictures of her new kitchen renovation that probably cost more than my annual salary. But here's what I can do, she continued. I have connections at several companies that are hiring. Good, stable corporate positions. Maybe it's time you got serious about your career instead of playing around with design work. Playing around? 8 years of professional work dismissed as playing around. My cousin Jake's response was perhaps the most honest, if not the most helpful. Man, Emma, that sucks. I'd love to help, but Sarah and I are saving for a house down payment right now. Every dollar is accounted for. At least he didn't lecture me about my choices or suggest I was irresponsible. He genuinely seemed sorry he couldn't help, which was something. What about a small amount? I pressed. Even $1,000 would help with groceries and gas while I job hunt. I really can't right now. But hey, if you need references for tech companies, I know people. Maybe it's time to transition into UX design or something with better pay. Everyone had the same solution: abandon my career and find something more acceptable to them. After 5 rejections, I was emotionally drained. Every person I'd asked for help had not only said no, but had used my vulnerability as an opportunity to criticize my life choices. The message was clear. I deserved to struggle because I'd chosen the wrong path. But there was one more call to make, and this one I was dreading most because I hoped for the most. My best friend Maya wasn't family, but she was closer to me than any of them. We'd met in college and stayed tight through everything. She was a nurse practitioner, made decent money, and had always been supportive of my art. When I called her with the same story, her response was immediate. Holy shit, Emma, that's terrifying. Are you okay? Do you have food? What do you need right now? Just hearing someone respond with concern, instead of judgment, made me start crying. I'm okay for the moment, but I need about $5,000 for rent and medical bills. I hate to ask. Stop, of course I'll help. I have about $3,000 in my emergency fund that I can transfer today. For the rest, give me until tomorrow to figure something out. Maybe I can ask my parents or get a cash advance. I was sobbing now. Maya, I can't ask you to drain your emergency fund. That's literally what emergency funds are for: emergencies. Your emergency is my emergency. We're family, Emma, the family we chose. The contrast couldn't have been starker. My actual family, with their millions in combined wealth, couldn't spare anything to help me avoid homelessness. But Maya, who made a fraction of what they did, was willing to empty her savings and go into debt for me. I'll pay you back as soon as I find work, I promised through my tears. Whenever you can, no pressure. Just focus on getting back on your feet. After that call, I sat in my apartment and cried for an hour. Not from gratitude, though I was grateful, but from the crushing realization of what my family really thought of me. The test had revealed everything I needed to know. When I was desperate, when I needed help, my wealthy family saw it as an opportunity to lecture me about my failures. They used my vulnerability to validate their belief that I'd made wrong choices and deserved whatever consequences came from those choices. But Maya, who had no obligation to help me, who gained nothing from my success or failure, was willing to sacrifice her own security for mine. I spent the next week continuing the charade, applying for jobs I didn't need, posting on social media about my job search, accepting Maya's money with promises to pay her back soon. Meanwhile, I was planning the reveal that would change everything. I decided to tell everyone the truth at our monthly family dinner. These gatherings usually happened at Victoria and Richard's house, with their professional catering and pristine dining room. This time, I asked if we could meet at a restaurant instead. Neutral ground felt important for what I was about to do. I chose Elway's, an upscale steakhouse downtown. Expensive enough that my family wouldn't balk at the location, but public enough that they couldn't cause too much of a scene. Victoria, Richard, Mom, Dad, Aunt Susan, and Jake all agreed to come. I told them I had important news to share about my job situation. Maya came too. I'd told her everything the night before, and she insisted on being there for support. As we sat around the table, making small talk over appetizers, I watched my family with new eyes. Victoria was wearing a dress that probably cost more than I used to make in a month. Richard was complaining about the wait time for his new Porsche. Mom was showing everyone photos from their recent wine tasting trip to Napa. So, Dad said after we'd ordered dinner, tell us about this new job opportunity. Susan says she has some good leads for you in insurance. I took a deep breath. This was it. Actually, there is no new job opportunity, and there was never a layoff. The table went quiet. Victoria frowned. What do you mean? I mean, I made up the story about being laid off. I never lost my job at all. What? Mom's voice was sharp. Emma, what are you talking about? I reached into my purse and pulled out a folded piece of paper, a printout of my lottery ticket confirmation. I set it on the table where everyone could see it. 3 weeks ago, I won the lottery, $47 million. The silence was deafening. Everyone stared at the paper, then at me, then back at the paper. Richard picked it up and examined it closely. This appears to be legitimate, he said slowly. It is. I looked around the table, meeting each of their eyes. I've already claimed the money and set up all the financial arrangements. After taxes, I'm worth about $28 million. Victoria was the first to find her voice. You're lying. I pulled out my phone and showed them my bank account balance. Not the full amount that was safely invested, but enough to prove the point. The number on the screen had 7 digits before the decimal point. Holy shit, Jake breathed. So why? Mom started, then stopped, her face going pale as she realized what I'd done. Why did you ask us for money? Because I wanted to know who would help me when I needed it. Who would be there for me when I had nothing to offer in return? The implications hit them all at once. I could see it in their faces, the dawning realization of how they'd responded when I'd asked for help. Emma, Dad fumbled for words, this is manipulative, you tricked us. I tested you, I corrected. I gave you all a chance to show who you really are when helping me cost you something, and you all failed spectacularly. Victoria's face was turning red. That's not fair, we couldn't have known. Exactly, you couldn't have known I had money, so you responded based on how you actually feel about me. And what I learned is that when I needed help, none of you could be bothered. We all have our own financial obligations, Aunt Susan protested. Do you? I turned to her. Because I asked for $5,000. Victoria, you spent more than that on your Tesla down payment last week. Mom and Dad, you spent more than that on your trip to Europe last month. Susan, your kitchen renovation cost more than I make in a year. I looked at each of them in turn. You all had the money. You chose not to help me because you thought I deserved to struggle. You thought my problems were my own fault for making bad choices. Now hold on, Richard interjected. We're not obligated to solve your financial problems just because we have money. You're absolutely right, I agreed. You're not obligated to help me, just like I'm not obligated to share my lottery winnings with you. That shut him up fast. Maya had been quiet through all of this, but now she squeezed my hand under the table. I squeezed back, grateful for her support. What do you want from us? Victoria asked, her voice small. Nothing, I said simply. I wanted to see who you really were, and now I know. Maya was the only person who offered to help me, even though she has the least money of anyone here. She was willing to empty her savings account and go into debt for me because she actually cares about my well-being. I stood up, placing my napkin on the table. The money doesn't change who any of you are. It just shows me clearly what was always true. You love the idea of me succeeding on your terms, but when I needed actual support, you were nowhere to be found. Emma, wait, Mom said desperately. We can talk about this, we're family. No, I said sadly. Family helps when it matters. Family shows up during the hard times. Family doesn't use someone's lowest moment as an opportunity to lecture them about their life choices. I pulled out my wallet and left $200 on the table. Dinner's on me. Consider it the last favor I do for any of you. As Maya and I walked toward the exit, I heard Victoria calling after us. Emma, you can't just leave. We need to talk about this. But I didn't turn around. There was nothing left to say. The next few weeks were interesting, to say the least. Once the shock wore off, my family's true colors really started to show. Victoria called me every day for a week, alternating between apologies and demands. Her messages started contrite. I'm so sorry, I didn't know, we should have helped regardless, but quickly devolved into entitlement. You have to understand, Emma, we would have helped if we'd known you were serious. We thought you were just being dramatic like always. Dramatic like always, there it was, their real opinion of me. By the end of the week, her tone had shifted completely. This is ridiculous, Emma. We're family. You can't just cut us off because of one mistake. Think about Mom and Dad's retirement. Think about the kids' college funds. The kids' college funds. Victoria's children, who already had trust funds set up by Richard's wealthy parents. She was literally trying to use her kids to guilt me into sharing money with her. Mom and Dad took a different approach. They started love-bombing me with calls and visits, suddenly interested in my life and work for the first time in years. Mom brought over old photo albums, trying to reminisce about all the wonderful family memories we've shared. Dad started asking about my art, pretending he'd always been supportive. It was pathetic and transparent. The most revealing conversation was with Aunt Susan, who called to pitch me on real estate investments. Emma, honey, you need to be smart with this money. Real estate is the key to building generational wealth. I have some amazing opportunities I could share with you. We could be partners. Partners? After refusing to help me with rent, she now wanted to be my business partner. I politely declined, and her mask slipped completely. You're being naive, Emma. This money could disappear as fast as it came if you don't invest wisely. You need experienced people guiding you, not whatever financial advisors you've hired. When I told her I was comfortable with my current team, she got nasty. Fine, be stubborn, but don't come crying to us when you've blown through it all in a few years. We tried to help. Help, she wanted to help now, when there was something in it for her. I documented all of these conversations, not for legal reasons, but because I wanted to remember exactly what happened when I needed to make future decisions about these relationships. Meanwhile, I was busy changing my life in wonderful ways. First, I paid Maya back with interest. I transferred $10,000 to her account with a note, emergency fund replenishment, plus a thank you for being real family. Then I bought her something she'd always wanted but could never afford, a reliable car. Her old Honda had been dying for years, but as a nurse, she needed dependable transportation. I found a beautiful, slightly used hybrid and had it delivered to her apartment with a bow on top. When she called me crying, I told her, this is what family does for each other. No conditions, no lectures, no expectations, just love. Next, I started my foundation. I'd always cared about arts education, having seen how underfunded art programs were in public schools. I established the Maya Chen Foundation for Arts Education, named after my chosen sister, with an initial funding of $2 million. Our first project was sponsoring art supplies and visiting artists for every elementary school in Maya's district. When the program launched, she got to cut the ribbon as the foundation's first board member. I also quietly paid off Maya's student loans. She'd been carrying over $40,000 in debt from nursing school, making minimum payments for years. I had her loan servicer transfer the balance to me, then immediately paid it off. She found out when she got a letter saying her debt was cleared. Emma, you can't keep doing things like this, she protested when she called me. Watch me, I replied. This is what I want to do with the money, take care of people who deserve it. For myself, I made some changes too, but modest ones. I moved out of my studio apartment into a nice two-bedroom condo downtown. Nothing flashy, just comfortable and modern with space for a proper art studio. I bought a reliable car, a Honda CR-V, practical but new. I started taking the art classes I'd always wanted to take. I enrolled in a graduate program for arts administration, something I dreamed about but could never afford. Most importantly, I quit my job at the marketing agency and started working with the foundation full-time. It was incredibly fulfilling to spend my days helping kids access art education instead of creating brochures for companies I didn't care about. The contrast between my new life and my family's expectations couldn't have been starker. They'd expected me to either go crazy with spending or to shower them with gifts. Instead, I was living modestly and giving strategically to people who deserved it. About 2 months after the restaurant revelation, Victoria showed up at my condo unannounced. I saw her through the peephole, standing in the hallway in her designer clothes, looking around at the modest building like it physically pained her. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. Zemma, we need to talk. No, we don't. Yes, we do. This has gone on long enough. You're being childish and vindictive. Vindictive, that was rich coming from someone who'd refused to help her own sister avoid homelessness. What do you want, Victoria? I want my sister back. The real Emma, not this cold person you've become. I'm the same person I always was. The only difference is that now I can see clearly how you've always treated me. Her composure cracked slightly. That's not true, we've always loved you. No, you've always loved the version of me that made you feel good about yourselves. The struggling artist who made your success look even better by comparison. The sister who would always be there to help you feel generous when you threw me scraps. That's not, she stopped, maybe realizing there was truth in what I was saying. When I needed real help, you couldn't be bothered. But now that I have money, suddenly you want to rebuild our relationship. That tells me everything I need to know about what our relationship actually was. She stood there for a moment, and I thought maybe she might actually apologize, might show some genuine remorse. Instead, she got angry. Fine, be selfish. But remember, when this money is gone and you have nothing left, we'll still be your family. Don't expect us to forget how you treated us. There it was, the threat. The implication that I needed them more than they needed me, that I should be grateful for their conditional love. I closed the door without another word. 6 months later, I'm sitting in my art studio, working on a painting for the foundation's upcoming auction. Maya is in the kitchen making dinner, and we're planning to watch a movie later. It's a quiet Friday night, and I can't remember the last time I felt this peaceful. The foundation is thriving. We've expanded to 3 school districts and have a waiting list of teachers who want to participate in our programs. I get letters from kids who have discovered they love art because of our visiting artist program. One 8-year-old named Marcus wrote to tell me that he wants to be an artist when he grows up because Ms. Jenny from the foundation showed me that art is important. Those letters mean more to me than any amount of money ever could. Maya and I have become even closer through this experience. She moved into the guest room of my condo after her lease ended, and we've created the kind of family I always wanted, one based on mutual support and genuine care, rather than obligation and guilt. Any regrets? She asked me last week as we were walking through the art museum. I thought about it seriously. Did I regret testing my family? Did I regret the pain of learning who they really were? No, I said finally. I regret that they showed me who they are, but I don't regret finding out. Living with illusions was worse than living with truth. The truth is that my family's love was conditional. It was based on me staying in my place, the struggling younger sister who made them feel successful by comparison. When I needed them, they saw it as confirmation that I'd made poor choices and deserved consequences. But Maya's love was unconditional. She helped me when I needed it, celebrated my success without jealousy, and never once tried to tell me how to live my life or spend my money. I've learned that family isn't just about blood. It's about showing up. It's about caring for someone's well being even when there's nothing in it for you. It's about supporting people's dreams instead of criticizing their choices. I still see my parents occasionally. We have brief, polite conversations about neutral topics. They don't ask about the money anymore, and I don't offer information about my life. It's sad, but it's honest. Victoria and I haven't spoken since that day at my condo. I see her posts on social media sometimes, still the same luxury lifestyle, still the same complaints about minor inconveniences. She's blocked me on Instagram, but mutual friends sometimes show me her posts. Last week she was complaining about how long the wait was for the new Range Rover she wanted. Some things never change. The most surprising development has been how little the money itself matters to me now. Yes, it's wonderful to never worry about bills or to be able to help worthy causes. But the real gift wasn't the money, it was the clarity. I know now who I am when I have everything, and who others are when they think I have nothing. I know the difference between people who love me and people who love what I can do for them. I've built a life aligned with my values instead of other people's expectations. I wake up every morning excited about the work I'm doing. I go to bed every night grateful for the real relationships in my life. The money gave me freedom, but not in the way I expected. It didn't free me from financial stress, though that's nice. It freed me from the need to earn love through sacrifice and accommodation. It freed me from relationships that were based on inequality and exploitation. Most importantly, it freed me from the belief that I deserved less because I'd chosen a path my family didn't approve of. I'm not bitter about what happened, I'm grateful. The test revealed truth, and truth, however painful, is always better than illusion. If I could go back and do it differently, would I? Would I skip the test and just tell everyone about the money right away? Never, because then I would have spent the rest of my life wondering who loved me and who loved my bank account. I would have been surrounded by people whose kindness was bought and paid for, never knowing if any of it was real. This way, I know Maya's friendship is real, my work with the foundation is meaningful, the life I've built is authentic. And that's worth more than $47 million could ever buy. To anyone watching this who has complicated family relationships, who has ever felt like the black sheep or the disappointment, your worth isn't determined by other people's opinions of your choices. You don't owe anyone access to your success if they weren't willing to support you through your struggles. Sometimes the family you choose is more real than the family you're born into. Sometimes loving yourself means walking away from people who only love you conditionally. It's not about the money, it's about respect, support, and genuine care. Those things can't be bought and they can't be faked forever. Build your life around people who celebrate your successes without jealousy and support you through difficulties without judgment. Those are the relationships worth investing in. The rest is just noise. That's my story. A lottery win that taught me more about relationships than money, and a family test that changed everything. What do you think? Was I right to test them? Or should I have just told everyone about the money from the beginning? Have you ever had to learn hard truths about people you trusted? Let me know in the comments, and please rate this story from 0 to 10. Your feedback helps me know what resonates with you. Remember, real family shows up when it matters, with no conditions attached. Don't settle for anything less. Thanks for listening to my story, and I hope it helps you see your own relationships more clearly. Sometimes the most painful truths lead to the most beautiful freedoms.